आनंदमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे ओम नमो भगवते श्री अरविंदाय। ओम तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपं ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ఇవాళ శ్రీ అరవిందుల వారి జన్మదినము. మనము మన ఆశ్రమ సాంప్రదాయంలో we celebrate it as a Darshan day. శ్రీమాత శ్రీ అరవిందుల వారు ద సిగ్నిఫికెన్స్ ఆఫ్ దర్శన్ డే గురించి మాట్లాడుతూ వారు ఏమన్నారంటే, దీస్ ఆర్ డేస్ ఆఫ్ స్పెషల్ డిసెంట్. అంటే ఫర్ స్పిరిచువల్ sadhaks, for people who are seeking spiritual realization, there are two aspects that are at work. One is our effort for spiritual growth, and the other is the divine grace that pulls us up. Mana prayasato, mana prayatnanto munduki veldamu ane aaratanto, mana prakrutito మనము పట్టే కుస్తీ ఒకవైపు ఉంటే, ఇంకొక వైపు దైవానుగ్రహము మన చేయి పట్టుకుని మన ముందుకు తీసుకెళ్తుంది. ఇవాల్టి రోజు ఎలాంటిదంటే, మన చిన్ని ప్రయత్నానికి పెద్ద ఫలితం వచ్చే అవకాశం ఉన్న రోజు. దీస్ ఆర్ దర్శన్ డేస్. ఆధ్యాత్మిక కుంభవృష్టి కురుస్తున్న దినాలు ఇవి. శ్రీ అరవిందుల పుట్టినరోజు, మదర్ పుట్టినరోజు, April 24th, November 24th సిద్ధి దినమన. ఇలాంటి రోజున మనము ఆశ్రమానికి వచ్చి, ఇఫ్ యూ స్పెండ్ హాఫ్ అన్ అవర్, 1 hour, 2 hours, it helps us in our spiritual progress. It pushes us. It brings light down into our cells. These are rare opportunities. These are great blessings. Our effort results in a disproportionately large result. And for us to gather on days like this is a blessing. To be able to gather on days like this is a blessing. ఎంతమందో వద్దో అనుకుంటారు పాపం దూరం దూరం నుంచి. Something works out, something doesn't work out. They want to come, some relatives come, something happens, they can't. But we are here and we should take that as a blessing of our gurus. Today's subject that we are taking up is reading Sri Aurobindo. How to read Sri Aurobindo? Ippudu many people face some basic fundamental difficulties when we take up reading Sri Aurobindo. I know some people who go to Amazon, Sri Aurobindo's books, Life Divine comes up. It's a magnum opus of Sri Aurobindo. Wikipedia is telling you that's the most important book of Sri Aurobindo. They order that book. And then they try to read the first paragraph. Then the second paragraph. And then they say, this is impossible to understand. He is too difficult. Put it aside. It remains there for a decade. There are people who order Savitri. The first canto is the most difficult canto in Savitri. And it remains that way. The book remains on the side. Even recently, there was a gentleman who wrote a book on Sri Aurobindo and released it this year, and I was talking to him and he said, I could not understand Savitri. It has been with me for a long time. Then I said, okay, there is a way to read Savitri. You do like first, the mother says that we should approach the writings of Sri Aurobindo with an attitude of inner goodwill and with the desire not merely to know but to receive it and live it. The right starting point, therefore, is inward openness, not just intellectual curiosity. This is true of spiritual writings in general. Intellect is only a part of us, but the heart has to open before the intellect can receive. There was a gentleman who did a PhD from Andhra University, one Sri Subbarao garu. Very serious, sincere seeker. In his retirement age, he did PhD in Upanishads. So when I got to know him, naturally I was quite curious. I said, Marima, Sri Aurobindo's Upanishad commentary chadivara ante. I read, but I could not understand a word of it. PhD in Upanishads, could not understand, he says. So why? There is a need for an opening at the heart, not just an intellectual curiosity. The second part, Mother says, keep the mind as silent as possible. Keep the mind as tranquil as you can. So, many of us are bibliophiles. We enjoy reading books. There are books we see, oh, this book out there, I think I can finish it within 10 days. This book I can finish it in a month. We have an idea because we have literally read hundreds of books. But when we approach spiritual books, it is a different ball game, because it is not just an understanding, it is a receiving of light. It is a receiving of knowledge. It is a journey of the soul. Perhaps that one book can change the journey of the soul. The time has come. So it's a very different way of looking at it. Very different way. Whether it is Bhagavad Gita, whether it is Upanishads, whether it is not just intellect, something more than that. And for that, one has to have general quietness. So for example, what does it mean, general quietness? Just silence in the mind. Okay, forget all these things. Try to read these books in the early hours of the day or late in the evening. That's a simple rule, because then normally you have calmed down. If you pick it up at 3 o'clock when your energies are in full flow, your mind is probably very scattered. So a good thing is when you read such books, it happened to me. There is another book that I came across. I saw it, okay, 100 pages, okay, I'll finish it within a week. I take that book, every morning I'm sitting for my coffee doing my reading, and it took me 4.5 to 5 months. Ashtavakra Samhita, Ashtavakra Gita. Thin book. But later on, somebody told me it is one of the highest works of Advaita Vedanta. So the size has nothing to do with the duration. This is one thing. So what is a good way to read Sri Aurobindo's works? Try to find a quiet place in the house. Try to pick it up at a time when you're generally quiet. Try not to have your mobile notifications pinging every now and then. No calls, preferably leave the mobile elsewhere. And try not to sit in a place in your house where people are constantly moving around. You need your energies to be gathered, first thing. And if you are more inclined, try to breathe a little calmly. If you are used to pranayam, try to do a little bit of anulom vilom. Generally, gather yourself and be receptive. Some of you who have attended our meditation sessions, we do scan from head to toe, toe to head, just for a couple of minutes, not a 20-minute ritual, just a general calming down, right? Begin with a certain turning upward, aspiring for light, whatever that means to you. There's no specific way of doing it. I am trying to grow spiritually, and this is my effort towards spiritual development. Just have that attunement. And begin with a simple inward prayer. A prayer to Mother, a prayer to Sri Aurobindo, a call to Mother, a call to Sri Aurobindo, a simple thought to the Mother and thought to Sri Aurobindo. I am trying to absorb your teaching. Just give me some help here. Even in Bhagavad Gita, in the initial dhyana shlokas, Advaita Amruta Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amban Tvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim. You turn to Bhagavad Gita and pray as you pray to a mother. Advaita Amrita Varshinim. ఎవరైతే అద్వైత అమృతాన్ని మా మీద కురిపిస్తున్నారో, అమ్మా నిన్ను అర్థం చేసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నాను తల్లి, ఆశీర్వదించి కనికరించి కొద్దిగా నీ జ్ఞానాన్ని నాకు అందుకునే అవకాశాన్ని ఇవ్వు తల్లి. ఈవెన్ దేర్ వీఆర్ సేయింగ్, మదర్ వీఆర్ ప్రేయింగ్ టు యూ. సో వీ షుడ్ టర్న్ విత్ అ. So you see the difference between how we read a casual book and versus how we read a spiritual book. There is a complete difference. Then, how to read for an understanding of yoga and integral yoga. The mother says, the true method is to read a little at a time with concentration, keeping the mind as silent as possible, without actively trying to understand, but turned upwards in a silence, aspiring for the light. Understanding will come little by little. Now, some people say, oh, I can read 25 pages, 30 pages, 50 pages in one sitting. The approach in spiritual reading is slightly different. It is important to pace oneself. Whether you read Mother or you read Sri Aurobindo, it is a good idea to not have a target. Absorb as much as you can at that moment and try to understand what is being said rather than covering a chapter. The idea is try to grab a little bit, small bite, and then you say, okay, what is the meaning here? Just look around, think about it. Take it a stage at a time. Do not be discouraged by difficult passages. There is an occult process that happens when we take up spiritual reading. మనకి తెలియని ప్రక్రియ ఒకటి జరుగుతుంది. ఏమిటి? There is a force. This force, received in the calm and the silence, will do its work of light. And if needed, will create in the brain the necessary cells for understanding. చూడండి మదర్ ఎక్కడ దాకా చెప్తున్నారు. She's saying, once you begin with this process, there is a force of yoga that comes down. There is a force of God that comes down, and it is trying to propel you towards that realization. These are words of realization. These are words of light. You may be 15 years old, you may read something in Sri Aurobindo, you may not understand. You may be 50 years old, you may read something in Sri Aurobindo, you may not understand. It has nothing to do with the physical age. And the light that comes down will create the necessary mental readiness, including the creation of the cells that are required. Thus, when one rereads the same thing some months later, one perceives that the thought expressed has become much more clear and close and even sometimes altogether familiar. So mother ఏమంటున్నారంటే, నీకు మొదటిసారి అర్థం కాలేదు, ఏం పర్వాలేదు, just hold it in your mind and let it go. After you come back after a few months, you may suddenly find that you already understand this. This is the secret of spiritual teachings. I know of two people personally who, they were reading Sri Aurobindo, they could not understand it. Could not understand it. They fall asleep, and in that dream Sri Aurobindo is sitting and explaining to them. He has come down, he is sitting next to them and explaining it to them. One of them was reading Savitri, another I think was reading Life Divine. And later this person said, after that, as I was reading Savitri, it was becoming apparent to me what it was. And I could suddenly see passages of Savitri rather than words of Savitri. And my comprehension went up like that. So the gurus we are with are willing to hold our hand. Sri Aurobindo says, it is my job to make you understand my writings. He's actually written it. Don't be discouraged. Have that inner connection. That's all that matters. You really can't understand it. Look into their eyes. And read again. And try to read again. And leave it for some time. It is their job. It's not our job. Another suggestion that Mother has given about reading Sri Aurobindo is, while on one side we do read books, try to read by subjects so that all that he has written about a subject is available in one place. So in this, many of you are subscribers to All India magazines. You're a member here, you get monthly All India magazine. If you are not, you talk to some of our friends in the back, they'll tell you. Every month you receive one book, one monthly. And these days those monthlies are mostly combined by subject. It's a compilation by subject. So you'll receive a thin book on meditation, thin book on education, thin book. Within a month you should be able to comfortably read it, and those passages also are selected in such a way that they're easy to follow compared to a full book of synthesis of yoga or something. So these books make it easy to read and understand. And also, one of the things when you read Sri Aurobindo is, if you're reading it linearly, book by book, then you may say, but in this book he said like this, in this book he said something else. So in a compilation, all those will come together and the comprehensiveness becomes evident. So it becomes easier to understand, and our partial understanding is not there. We are able to understand it more widely and more comprehensively. There are similarly books by A.S. Dalal. I keep always full stock of A.S. Dalal here, because they are some of the best introductions to Mother and Sri Aurobindo. People who don't understand high yogic thing, give them one book, Living Within, Looking From Within, Powers Within. Powers Within is an excellent book for youngsters. Living Within is a book, complete study on consciousness, starting from our unconscious to the superconscious. Beautiful book. It's a great study on, for some of you might be smiling because I've recommended these books to some of you and you have gone and done that detailed studies. So these are some excellent books. Similarly, some time ago here, I think this year only, we had Jamshedji come and give a 2-day talk on psychic being. Jamshedji's compilations, there are some 70 compilations available online, free to be downloaded from Auro Society. He has done a comprehensive job of compilations. Just download it. If you are a youngster, you read ebooks, pick up among 70 titles, whatever appeals to you. So these are all ways to read. Now we get a little deeper. How to read for realization and spiritual development. The Mother again repeats, concentration, silence, and receptivity allow the force contained in the writing to enter deep within. Concentration, silence, and receptivity. Because it is not enough to read, you have to soak in those words. Just soak. What does that mean? Each in his own way. For example, one of the senior sadhaks in the ashram, he taught the students for many decades, and one of the things he would tell the students is, okay, you read one paragraph, in a notebook, write one sentence of what that paragraph says. Particularly for those who are under 40, I would recommend this. At some point, you have gone beyond the obvious basic books. Now you want to get into some serious book. Maybe essays on the Gita, maybe synthesis of yoga. These are intermediate works. Take up essays on the Gita. Okay, 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. Read through 1 page. Come back to the first paragraph. What is the essence of that 1 paragraph? Write it down on a book. 1.1, 1.2, 1 sentence, 2 sentences, the way you understand it. This is now not just reading or studying, it is now soaking in the knowledge that is there. Summarize the key points in each reading, and the next time you come, start with those points. And then, of course, like with all spiritual readings, put what is read into practice. How does this teaching apply to me in my stage of life right now? unless we are able to translate it, yogic readings are inconsequential. In your own way, at whatever level, small book, big book. This is practice, right? Reflect upon it, meditate upon what is read. One of the people who was working on Savitri for translation, what he would do, some passages, when he found them little difficult to comprehend, he would write it on a piece of paper, put it in the pocket. Every 2 hours, take, again read that a few times, put it back, because it has to reveal itself. These are books of revelation. He would keep reading, and gradually those writings would become self-evident. And later on, as you keep soaking yourself in this knowledge, somebody will come and ask you some very practical question about day-to-day life. You will give them some answer, and then you find that your answer actually came from what you've been reading for the last 2-3 years. It didn't come from your mind. Because now that knowledge has made its space inside of your being. Somebody behaved badly with me, what should I do? You will tell them something, and later on you will realize, "Arey, this is what mother had said in that book, I didn't even remember it. I just blurted out." That means slowly that knowledge is finding its place inside of you and beginning to guide the soul journey. Avoid turning the teaching into an intellectual debate. That's not meant for it. And in some satsangs, Mother has said, come, read, just take up one question, discuss, stop there. Don't make it a merry-go-round discussion. We have satsangs, Archanaji's satsang for example, she concentrates primarily on reading and silence. Reading, silence. Each understands in their own way. Each receives in their own way. Because many times, multiple discussions on the same subject can dilute the atmosphere also, or our understanding also. See what suits you. So I've given you the broad framework of spiritual reading. The bottom line is, when we take up words of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, their consciousness is trying to work directly on your consciousness. This is the occult truth. This is the occult truth. Now let us take up the fundamental question, which would say, okay, what to read? Now so far we have 80% we have discussed how to read, what to read. For those of you who have a reasonable comprehension of letters of yoga and basic understanding of English, start with Letters on Yoga, volume 2 to begin with. It has 4 volumes. Start with volume 2. It's a very practical guideline, like somebody said, it's an onboarding manual, So that's how it is. It's like, how do you get onto yoga? Do this. Read this. Letters on Yoga, volume 2. Then you can do 3, 4 and come back to 1. 1 deals with the larger philosophical framework in letters. So then you will understand what is psychic being, what is supermind, all those questions come up, what is vital, what is lower vital. And then there are sections in this book called Planes and Parts of the Being. It gets into a lot of detail in understanding ourselves. Why can't we change our nature so easily? What are the difficulties of nature? How should you look at changing nature? All these things will come in Letters on Yoga, volume 2. Then, Essays on the Gita. Sri Aurobindo has written this volume in 2 parts, Essays on the Gita, 2 series. Wonderful book. Small. Each chapter is only 10 pages, 12 pages. Having Gita on your side has multiple advantages. Many people who come to spiritual seeking already have some idea of Bhagavad Gita, so it makes it easy to understand. You know Bhakti Yoga, you know Jnana Yoga, you know Karma Yoga, you know Sthita Prajna, you know Vishwarupa, universal consciousness. So some basic themes are already familiar. If you have friends who are in the sadhana of Gita or who understand Gita and you want them to know what is Sri Aurobindo saying, give Essays on the Gita. It's a very easy bridge to connect to Sri Aurobindo. I know of a case where it is in our ashram chronicles where somebody was visiting a relative in Calcutta. The relative happens to be a follower of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and that somebody happens to be a student of Gita lifelong. Somebody who has read multiple translations, and then he reads Sri Aurobindo and he says, my God, I've been reading Gita for 15 years. I haven't understood, some major issues are there in my understanding. So then he started reading essays on the Gita in detail and then gradually discovered Sri Aurobindo through that. So Gita is a good way of starting, Gita is a good way of understanding, and even for those of us who are on the path, there are two versions of the, essays on the Gita is of course the main work of Sri Aurobindo, but those of you who are interested, you also will be happy to know our Jhunjhunu devotees have published Bhagavad Gita by Sri Aurobindo. So what they did was very interesting. They took all the 700 shlokas, they took essays on the Gita, and shloka by shloka they incorporated all the material. So you have Bhagavad Gita by Sri Aurobindo, even though Sri Aurobindo himself hasn't written 700 slokas translation, you have that complete book available. We must be having copies here as well, Bhagavad Gita. I read both of them back to back, and I must tell you that the Bhagavad Gita that compiled by Jhunjhunu branch is a fantastic book, because it takes up the themes of Gita and gives you extra emphasis where it is required, like Purusha and Prakriti. When you read normally Gita, okay, you read half a passage of Purusha and Prakriti, you move on, but you don't realize how important the theme of Purusha and Prakriti is in yoga sadhana. It is one of the most foundational concepts, and in the other book of Jhunjhunu people, 30-40 pages of Purusha and Prakriti is described. It's a very important theme. So you can read essays on the Gita. So if letters on yoga is the practice of integral yoga, there is a counterpart to it, which is the theory of integral yoga. This is synthesis of yoga. This is the theoretical framework of integral yoga. There are several ashramites for whom this is a favorite book. They have been reading forever and ever and ever. And for some of us who have been on the path for 30-40 years, if you come and ask, where is your synthesis of yoga? We can't give you a book, we'll give you a bunch of pages because we have read it so many times and underlined every page of it that it's become. So we should absorb synthesis of yoga so much if we are serious about it. Synthesis of yoga is again a very good theoretical grounding, and of course Sri Aurobindo, in addition to bhakti, jnana and karma, he has talked about yoga of self-perfection towards the end, which is a really beautiful section of Sri Aurobindo's writings. It's mind-boggling, really. It's really, revelation means revelation, that yoga of self-perfection. It changes your perspective of what humanity is and what its future is. That's all I can tell you. Very powerful. Then comes the favorite of lots of people in the path of integral yoga called Savitri. Savitri. I mean, there is I have a way of describing Savitri for followers of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. It is like the Tanpura. Throughout the concert, it is going on in the background. Throughout life, Savitri is going on in the background. We have among us people who for 15-20 years, every night before going to bed, they read 2 pages of Savitri. It is a book of revelation, Mother has said. It's a book of mantric power. It's a book of healing. Alok Pandeyji narrates how in his travels some many decades ago, he was in one of the towns where every evening they were reading Savitri. And 25-30 years ago, houses weren't as pakka as they were, so neighbors also could hear what was going on. So one day the neighbor came and said, "What do you guys read in the evening?" "Why?" "Well, it sounds very nice what you're reading, but by the way, after you guys have started reading, after a couple of months, my back pain has disappeared." Unintended consequence. But many people have found it is a book of healing. It is a book of tremendous healing. There are people who have experienced, even associated with our ashram, they give a book to somebody, that person is opening the book and they're seeing light coming out of that book. That is Savitri. Mystical poetry. So, there is enough to say about Savitri, and it's a part of all of our lives. It is again a book of revelation. There are people who use Savitri also to find very practical solutions to day-to-day problems. Mother has given guidance for spiritual books. You take a pen or something and you just close your eyes, concentrate, you put the pen somewhere in the book and open the book and read those passages. You take that as the message that is coming to you. Mother has given guidance on this. So people do that also, having very interesting experiences. Then comes life divine. I am reminded of the poem by Dara. There used to be a sadhak called Dara, a Muslim poem, Muslim sadhak who thought he was a poet also, and you will soon know why. And I like him because his interactions with mother are very grounded. So he once wrote to the mother, because you used to, in ashram, prosperity used to be given. So tea used to be given to this particular gentleman, a packet of tea. So he wrote, Mother, all my tea. I have finished all my tea. I need some tea. So that is how he used to write. And when Life Divine came out, he wrote, Life Divine, Mother's wine, the book is out, let us shout. So he was my kind of poet, he can only write 4 lines. So that is Life Divine, And it is a book that brings together all of the foundational philosophical concepts of Sri Aurobindo's Darshana. Philosophy is Darshana. And when you talk of philosophy, there is a framework in which a philosophy is supposed to be presented. If I get up tomorrow and I write a book, why does it not become philosophy of Srinivas? But when Sri Aurobindo writes Life Divine, why does it become philosophy of integral yoga? There are frameworks which have been accepted in the field of philosophy for centuries. For example, you are supposed to answer some basic questions about universe, man and God, and how these 3 are interacting with each other without contradicting, on basic approach of philosophy. Then, is the universe static or dynamic? Is the universe, is there a unity or multiplicity in this universe? How do you explain this? This goes back to Greek philosophy. From all those years, these questions have to be answered, and all of those have been answered by Sri Aurobindo in Life Divine. In addition to that, there is something called Purva Paksha. You are supposed to present the other philosophies that are existing at your time and point out how you are different. There is an entire framework, it's a field in itself, and all of that comes into Life Divine. There is Purva Paksha. In the introductory section of Life Divine, he talks about Raja Yoga, other Jnana Yoga. He talks about all of those things, explains to you. So it is a difficult book, but also it is a book that some people consider absolutely necessary to read. MP Panditji, who was one of the sadhaks of our ashram, he said, take up Life Divine a little later rather than as one of the early books, because you need a much wider base before you can understand Life Divine. You need a much wider and a more robust base. So these are the works of Sri Aurobindo that are important. In another 2-3 minutes, I'll just summarize I mention a few other lines. I've already talked to you, A.S. Dalal, other popular books. These are all compilations or books associated with Sri Aurobindo Mother, which are good to read if you want to know the whole field, and easy to read. A.S. Dalal series, Living Within, Growing Within, Looking From Within. These are easy readings. These you can read anytime you want. I know youngsters keep it on their table, and whenever they want, they refer to some of these things. There is a book called The Mother's Vision, which is a very easy read, very beautiful read. Right now, Sunita Rajsekar garu is doing Sunday sessions on that book. Very practical guidance, very easy to read. Some of the senior sadhaks say, that is my go-to book whenever I have questions. Then Beyond Man by George Wreckham is a brilliant book. It's a book that brings Mother's biography, Sri Aurobindo's biography, and integral to Mother and Sri Aurobindo for bringing us here on this most beautiful and significant day.